Hello, hello, friends. How's it going? It's Katie Rubin, your friendly neighborhood modern mystic, energy healer, divine light channel. What the hell's going on? How are you? There's three of you here. I love it. We're a huge crowd of three. This is a fun topic, and there's so much to say about it. Wish me luck on trying to summarize this. There's so much to say. Usually, it's funny because every time I've ever said, "There's so much to say on this. How am I going to say it all?" I say it in like less time than we have. I end up saying it in like 4 sentences. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, welcome here. Say hi in the chat if you feel like it, so I know who I'm talking to. That would be great. You don't have to, but it's nice when you do. We haven't done a Katie Church in a while, or maybe we did one last week or a while before. I don't remember. It's I'm all over the place. There's a lot going on. Um, so it's nice to be back. Alex Rizzi. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're here. Hi, Henny. Hey. All right, let's just dive into this topic. So, Jacqueline Holbrook, hello, good to see you, sister. Who else is here? Say hi if you feel like it. Who's here? Who's here? Join empowerment. How to live into them. I love you too, my homie, a whole lot. So, my goodness. Okay, here's the first thing about joy and empowerment. First, oh God, there's so much to say. Why do I put them together, by the way? Joy and empowerment. Like we could just talk about joy or we could talk about empowerment. But I find that so often they go hand in hand and they're like related to each other. It's hard to be empowered in a real holistic and full complete way when there's no joy involved. And it's hard to be joyful when you're not empowered. So they're sort of like cousins or something, or roommates, or married in some way, these two energies, joy and empowerment. Um, the shortest thing we could say about how do we live into our joy and our empowerment more fully is you have to consciously choose it against all odds and against all the energies that are up for you against it, right? Let's say what comes up for you in the face of pursuing more joyful experiences is, I don't deserve it. Okay. Maybe what comes up for you is people physically around you who have no joy and they bring your energy down. Let's say the thing in your way is you feel like it's not possible. There's all kinds of internal and or external impediments to joy and to the pursuit of joy and empowerment that can arise within us and from without of us as well. So what we have to do is choose it anyway, which, okay, if it looks like you live with people who are a bummer, you might want to not live with them anymore. So you have to really choose against the limitations that are outside of you. Another way you could frame that is if you live with some people, but you can't move out now, or you're not ready to move out, right? And they're bummer people. Well, then you're going to have to choose joy in the afternoons when you leave the house, or on the weekends, or whenever you can, or lock your bedroom door and dance around and play music if that makes you feel joyful, despite whatever the people in the kitchen are doing. But one of the big things that we're always working with joy and empowerment is not letting the judgments of other people stop us from pursuing and experiencing our joy and empowerment. How do you not let them? You have to choose against it. You have to choose. You have to like move your body physically. You have to take your feet to will yourself to the location where the joy happens. You have to choose it. Another thing to say about this is you have to choose people in your life. You want to be surrounded by people who uplift you, who make you feel more joy, who like it when you're joyful. When you're surrounded by people who don't want you empowered or joyful, it's very hard to be empowered and joyful. People are constantly saying at the beginning of their healing path, how do I stay with my abusive or alcoholic husband and just love my life and not be tripping on it? And I'm like, you can't. That's too hard. There's a metaphor I use with one of my clients all the time, and if she's here, she'll know I'm talking about her. But also, this is just a 12-step saying that I stole and apply everywhere. It's actually not. It's my own version of a 12-step idea. But the idea is if you keep dipping your, like, let's say you're if you go to The forest, and in the middle of the forest you go to, there's a pond, and it's filled with battery acid, and you go there every day, and you dip your toes in it, and you go, "Ow, the battery has acid hurts my feet," and then you email me and go, "Can I have a healing so that I get better at putting my feet in battery acid and not being upset about it?" I'm gonna write you back and go, "No, you have to stop going to the pond where the battery acid is. Don't put your fucking feet in the goddamn battery acid." There she is. She knows who she is. Okay, but this is an apt metaphor for everybody on this topic all the time. So if you're hanging out with people who don't like it when you're joyful, or don't like it when you're empowered, or resist you when you're joyful or empowered, the first thing to do is communicate with them about it and say, like, hey, you have to try to get your needs met. You have to say to them, like, I notice that every time I feel alive, you seem to want me to come back down to earth. Or I feel excited, you seem to want me to be not excited. Or whatever. Every time I'm up, you want to bring me down. I need you to stop doing that. Or can you help me understand what that's about for you? Have you noticed that you're doing that? And then you have to have some negotiating conversations where together you figure out if the person can stop doing this in your presence or not. And if they, excuse me, can't stop doing it, excuse me, or choose not to stop doing it, at some point you're going to have to choose yourself over them. You're going to have to choose your joy and your empowerment over your connection with that people, that person, or those people. So, one of the hardest things for human beings to do is to let go of connection in the name of themselves. Whether it's about joy, empowerment, or anything else, boundaries, self love, self care, taking a bath, whatever it is, making more money, quitting a job, taking a job, having a friendship, not having a friendship, people stay in their connection with other people above choosing for themselves so often, even when staying in connection with the other people is dragging them downhill faster than they can even understand. And it speaks to the power of connection and how important connection is. But another reason we do this to ourselves is we don't believe or always have faith that if we let go of one connection in the name of honoring ourselves, that there will be someone else we can connect with on the other side of that choice. And I'm here to tell you, when you don't have faith that that is true, have faith that I have faith. My entire life has been a series of letting go of one person or group of people after another in order to discover a new group of people who have more of what I want, more of what is resonant for me. I am the living, walking proof and embodiment of the truth that exists, that says, if you let go of the connection you have now with someone who's bringing you down, or doesn't, another way to say that is doesn't support or enjoy your joy and empowerment, what you're doing is you're opening the space in the universe and in your life for people who do support your joy and empowerment to show up. The longer you hang out with people who pull you out of your joy and empowerment, the harder it is to have more joy and empowerment, period. That's because we're energetic beings. People always want to be able to transcend this somehow and be so evolved and so empowered and so not codependent that they can be around their fucking deadbeat partner or their fucking sad sack parents or their whoever that's dragging them down in the name of fucking connection. I'm telling you, there are people you can connect with who also don't make you feel like ass. They exist. Now, the further down the path of consciousness you get, will there be fewer people you can tolerate? Probably. The more awake you become, the more high vibration your field becomes, and the less of other people's bummer vibes you really want to handle. That's true. Now, that doesn't mean, when I say bummer vibes, I don't mean abandon all your friends when they're having a hard day or judge your friends and family for struggling with life sometimes. We're not talking about that. This is not black and white ism, and this is not toxic positivity. This is, there comes a point where you realize, I am happy to support the pain and the journey and the process of my top 3 to 5 people, because they're so high vibe generally, and they're so on my level generally, that I get that when they dip into their shit, and they always come out the other side. They know how to do their own work. They are empowered and in their own joy enough of the time that I trust that when they're struggling, I can support them and they're going to get through it. When you have people around you who resist or resent your joy and empowerment, however, those are people who are not interested in pulling themselves up and out of their own muck. They're interested in staying down there and pulling you down with. So discerning which people are in your reality is tricky business. And we may have time to ask some questions later. If you guys have specific questions, I'm happy to read on it for you and see what I get for you. Okay. That's piece number one. We have to choose our joy and empowerment. Nobody's going to choose it for you. Piece number two is you can choose your joy and empowerment, even in the face of resistance that you have against it. Like, I can resist going to the gym, but go anyway. I can resist throwing a dance party in my bedroom because it makes me feel joyful and throw one anyway. You could push through your own resistance. Okay. However, there comes a point where pushing through everything to get to joy becomes very draining. Maybe some of you can relate to this, which is why you're here listening to this topic or curious about this conversation. When you discover that your unconscious mind, your heart, your body, your soul, whatever it is, has so much resistance to you having empowerment, to you having joy, to you experiencing your joy and empowerment regularly, every day in your life, that's when it comes down to, okay, there might be some healing work to do here. Um, I can speak for myself and say there were so many years where, I mean, God, I felt like I had no access to joy unless I was on stage. I've talked about this many times that for a long time, performing on stage, it was not only the only thing that gave me joy, it was the only thing that made me feel alive at all. I literally felt dead inside and depressed when I was not performing. And then for me, eventually that whole thing had to end because I realized, okay, I can't have my life be I'm collapsed in my bed or I'm on a stage happy. That can't be my life. There has to be some joy in the rest of my life. Something's not right here. And when I did my own self digging and self exploration, I realized I was really using the adrenaline that comes with performance to focus my ADD and to bring me and to like pull me out of depression, almost like it was like what's that? What's the, this makes sense, right? What's the thing called that you shove into someone who's dying? You shove it into their heart, then they get it's a stabby. Oh my God, I cannot think of the words I'm trying to say. It's like an adrenaline, needle that you stab and like an EpiPen. I think that's what that is. If you know what I'm talking about, write it in the chat. It was like I was using theater and live performance as an EpiPen to sort of jolt my heart out of depression. So then I got really committed to, like, as I said a moment ago, finding a way to have joy in just my waking reality. I was looking around life and I was noticing there are people who are just going to the grocery store experiencing joy. And I thought, there's no reason they can experience that and I can't. Why? Why would one person have access to that and another not? It doesn't make any sense. So, and any reason you could come up with to justify why that might be how reality is, I can debunk it. So if you have any, throw them in the chat and we'll talk about it. So once I discovered that and I realized that, I thought, okay, I'm getting busy healing, clearing, processing, releasing every piece of pain and trauma from my past that lives on my heart that keeps me from living into my joy and having easy access to joy. I want joy to be on fucking tap. I want to be able to just be joyful because I'm joyful. Now, we don't want to start to think like I have to be joyful all the time because that is where we get into toxic positivity. Everything's joy and positive vibes only. No, I'm a moody motherfucker. If anybody knows me personally here at all, I'm my human design is like I have two different channels that both say this is one of the moodiest channels in any possible design. I have two of those. So I'm moody as hell. I need a lot of time alone. I like to wallow in feelings and go deep and dive down into the well of nothingness, and then I'm up in the light of consciousness, and then I'm grounded and normal, and then I'm happy and joyful and empowered, and then I'm resting, and then I'm watching TV. Like, so I'm all over the place, right? But I have at my core in my midline this kind of quiet, um, I guess I could call it like centered okayness. Like everything's okay at the core of my being. And that's the result of all the work I've done. My point being, um, A, we have to choose our joy and our empowerment. But B, if there are energies inside of your heart and your spinal column and your nervous system and your mind that make having joy on tap when you're ready for it, when your nervous system is actually available for joy, when something occurs and joy arises or is trying to arise, you're able to allow it. That's what I'm talking about, as opposed to toxically positively being happy all the time. We want to have access to our joy when joy is arising. I mean, I used to be someone who couldn't even access my joy when it was there. I was like, I know that I would feel joyful now, but I'm not feeling it because there was so much density on my heart from all the trauma, and also just all this, the karmic stuff I came into this body with from past lives, and all the way I was raised. My dad's ethos was happiness isn't a thing, and people who pursue happiness are stupid. That was my dad's point of view. And I internalized that very deeply and believed it for a long time. Like, smart people aren't happy. We're, East Coast intellectuals. We're smarter than happy people. We don't do happy. If you're happy, you're stupid. That was my dad's ethos. Then there was my mom, who would do like denial to get her to happiness. And her denial was really pretty toxic for the rest of us, because denial creates a lot of other kinds of problems. So my whole framework for joy was like not great. So the only way it was either like, if you have joy, you're in denial and you're an asshole because of it, or if you have joy, you're stupid, according to my dad. So like joy was like bad in my life. But I was a young girl who was really interested in joy. So because I had none of it imprinted in my heart from the parent figures, I found it through alcohol and drugs and sex and adrenaline and any dissociative, like addictive pattern you could have. That's the only way I knew to have joy. So when I got sober and started to really look at myself in when I was 23, I mean, I was always looking at myself, but I got real on the path, you could say, at around 23 years old. Um, I became pretty determined to figure out how I was going to not feel dead when I wasn't on stage. Okay. So what I got busy doing was clearing every single piece of trauma, pain, suffering, parental imprinting, cultural imprinting, karmic imprinting, past life imprinting, alien influence, shatanic influence that was there on my heart and in my nervous system, blocking me from the ability to just experience joy. You can do this too. There's no reason any of us have to live a life that has no joy in it. Something else I want to say about joy and empowerment. Okay. This is a in the last 5 years discovery of mine. I feel a little late to the consciousness party on this one, but I need to say this out loud. It is a very real thing that your level of joy and empowerment is very much affected by your physical location on the earth. Where you are standing on the planet in relationship to what the planets are doing. So I'm talking about astrocartography here. I cannot speak highly enough about astrocartography. If you haven't looked at your astrocartography with somebody who can decipher it for you, I really recommend it. In fact, here I will give everybody this woman's email. I probably already have to many of you. Her name is Elizabeth something. Give me a second. I want to give this to all of you. She's just a lady who's good at astrocartography. She has a business, Elizabeth Smith. I'm going to put her email right here in the chat. Just fucking have a session and just say to her, oops, there should be an E at the beginning of that. I apologize. Here, the correct email is coming through now. It's the one with the E at the beginning. You want to say to her, I want to find out where is the best place for me on the planet, where I'm going to experience the most joy, the most empowerment. Where will I feel the most alive? Astrocartography is real. That is to say, how do I talk about this in the simplest way? If you think about um, the way the planets influence Earth, right? In terms of think about a Mercury retrograde. You've noticed by now, weird shit goes on. Imagine if you could choose a place on the planet where the alignments were such that you were supported planetarily, generally speaking, in an overarching way, more than you were thwarted or diminished. That's what's available to us. If you look at your astrocartography and see where is the most joyful place I could be, that's a big help. It has helped me tremendously. When I moved from New York to Jacksonville, one of the main reasons I did it, and a lot of people think I'm a super kook for this, and I understand, is because of how many exalted planets there are for me on this latitude line in Jacksonville. Many people think many different things about why I might be here. The biggest reason is astrocartography. What I learned with my astrologer that there's a band across the earth that goes through like near Austin, Texas, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Jacksonville, Florida, kind of Gainesville, that kind of line that is very exalted for Katie Rubin. I have 5 exalted planets right here. It's a lot out of however many planets there are in our solar system. I can't remember. And I got to tell you, I have experienced it. It's knock wood, thank God, very, very positive for me here. Now, from my mind, I never would have chosen this location for many very obvious reasons. But I don't live from my mind anymore. I live from awareness, consciousness, and choice. What's going to create the most for me? What, in fact, is going to create what I've really been interested in the most recent years is the most joy and empowerment. And following where the astrocartography is supportive of my system has been very important to me. And I'm living proof that it works. And I promise you it's good. And if you have questions about it, please feel free to email me and we can talk about it and I'll fill you in. Okay, so back to for your purposes, how do you get and have more joy and empowerment? We talked about you got to choose it. We talked about you got to get away from people, even if it's in small spurts, if that's all you can handle for now, who don't want you to have it, who pull you away from it, who pull you down off of your joy and empowerment. We talked about you got to do your healing work to clear the internal energies that are blocking you from receiving joy or being willing or able to be empowered. Now, there's a lot more I could say about just that piece, and I'm going to break that down in a minute. Like, for example, what are the different ways we need to and or can unlock the resistances and the blocks we have to experiencing, creating, and receiving more joy and empowerment internally? The blocks and resistances come in a bunch of different shapes and can take a number of different tools that you need to apply in order to get rid of all of them. Okay. So, depending on who you are and what your specific history is and what your issues are, you may need this or that tool to clear this or that block to your own joy or and your own empowerment. Sorry, this light is so bright. I'm struggling with it. I'm trying to like be lit, but also not be like, it's like blasting into my third eye. Ugh. That's all I can see is the brightness of this lights. And then somehow the glasses make it worse. I think because of the ting ting ting. This is called glass. That's why they're called glasses. I know stuff. Cool. So, well, let's just break that down now. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing before I go into that. No. So we'll break that down now. There's so much to say just on this piece of it. So I'm going to list a couple different ways you can work, like modalities you can use, tools you can apply to process the energies that may be standing in the way of you experiencing more joy and empowerment. EFT tapping, incredibly effective to clear trauma and get you back to a place where you can receive your joy and empowerment. Divine light transmission, like I do in my practice, incredibly effective at that. Talk therapy, if you can feel your feelings in the talk therapy and sit deeply into your feelings, that can clear and process all the things that block you from your joy. Body work, right? Physical body work, massage, anything that Bowen, um, osteopathy, right? When you have a physical blockage and you can get somebody working on your physical body in a way that gets things moving, acupuncture, tai chi, any energy system that's going to clear blocked energies can help you process your trauma from the past so that you can have more joy and empowerment. What our processing of the past does is it makes it easier for us to choose more joyful and more empowered moments day by day. What energy healing does not do, therapy, trauma healing, EFT, EMDR, any of it, what it can never do for you is choose joy for you. So, for example, let's say I cleared all my blocks to joy using EFT when that was appropriate, EMDR when that was appropriate, body work when that was appropriate, energy work when that was appropriate, therapy work when that's what I needed. I chose it and I chose it and I cleared it and I cleared it. And then I just sat around and kept dating the same kind of people, not making any money, not following my dreams, not believing I get to follow my dreams, uh, choosing jobs I hate. I can choose all kind of stuff all day long to bring my vibe right the fuck downtown, away from joy and out of empowerment. This is what I mean by it doesn't matter how much healing work you do if you don't choose joy. You got to choose people to hang out with who give you joy. You got to choose people to hang out, people to serve. You got to choose jobs. You got to only do jobs that up your joy quotient. You got to choose foods to eat that up your joy quotient. You got to choose clothes you wear that make you more joyful and feel more empowered. You have to make empowered choices in order to feel like an empowered lady or person. This is one of the biggest keys, and we'll call this point number 4 on this topic. One of the most important ways to have more joy and more specifically more empowerment is you have to do empowered actions even when you don't feel ready for it. It's like the self-esteem trick. You can't get self-esteem by healing yourself only. You get self-esteem by taking self-esteemable action. What actions can you take today that will make you feel after you took them more empowered? After you take empowered action, you feel empowered. After I go to the gym, I feel good. After I show up to a Katie church, I feel alive. After I work with a client, I feel like I'm living my purpose. After I perform in a show, I feel high as a kite. And while I'm lifting weights and while I'm talking to you guys and while I'm performing, I feel empowered and joyful. Before, not always. I don't always want to fucking drive my ass to the theater and get my fucking costume on and get ready and go in that cold room where I have to change and their heater doesn't work. I don't always want to have to drive all the way 30 minutes east to get to the improv theater. I don't want to walk this jog. I don't want to have to do anything. I want to just lay here and have my joy and my empowerment come to me on the wind. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. As I'm making my choices and doing my empowered things, I'm experiencing my joy and my empowerment. And afterwards. So a lot of times it's about asking yourself, what are my feet doing? Are my feet moving in the direction of more joy and more empowerment for me personally? Or are they moving me away from joy and empowerment? So, yes, you need to do your healing work and your integration work to clear everything that stands in your way to you being able to receive and choose your joy and empowerment. But even when you're until then, until you're done with all the healing you have to do of your whole life, you still can choose more joy and empowerment. Now, the last piece I want to talk about this is, and then I want to hear any questions you guys have. So please start to think about any questions you might have about this or insights or things you'd like to share. Sometimes the things we think will give us joy and empowerment do not. And that can be a real confusing moment. If anybody relates to this, maybe pop it in the chat and let me know. But there have been many things that I thought would create joy and empowerment for me that didn't. And then there have been things where I've just done them out of necessity and found out in the doing of them that they created joy and empowerment for me. So sometimes you have to try new stuff. You literally have to live into new choices in order to discover that that's where the actual joy and empowerment are. One of the most common ways that this shows up for people is people think getting a lot of money, getting a lot of fame, getting a lot of visibility, getting power, getting status, you know, people, places, things, money, property, prestige. If I get more people that are cool in my life, if I look really pretty, if I make all the money, if I have all the houses, if I'm very popular, if I'm famous, if I, whatever, all that stuff, that I'll feel joyful and empowered. Here's the trick. Um, for some people, that's actually true because for them on their life path, what makes them feel joyful and empowered is making lots of money and having pretty cars. That's how they feel joyful and empowered. For me, if I just pursue, I know this because I've tried a lot. When I just pursue money, power, property, and prestige, I feel empty and dead inside. I look around, I go, wow, I got all this cool stuff. And why do I feel depressed still? Why does it all feel pretty unsatisfying? And then it gets very tempting to go, what's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. Oh, I'll do 10 more years of healing work. And then one day I'll be able to appreciate that I'm wealthy and famous and popular. Nope. Probably in that case, if when people run into that problem, it's because they thought that money, property, prestige would bring them the joy and the empowerment they were seeking, but it doesn't. Because discovering what actually makes you feel joyful and what actually makes you feel empowered and what is actually empowering for you is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. I've done many things I thought would make me feel joyful and empowered, and they actually made me feel drained. And then I've even done this, and may this be helpful and useful to you. I've done the thing where I try a thing because I think it's going to make me happy. It doesn't. So I do the opposite of that, thinking that'll make me happy, and it doesn't. And then I discover over time there was a blend, a subtle in the middle place blend that creates the joy and empowerment. Isn't that a weird trip? Because you would think, oh, if I do a thing and it's not joyful, I should do the opposite of that thing. Oftentimes, that's how people function in their minds. It's not always true. In fact, 9 times out of 10, it's not true. There's always nuance and subtlety to figuring out and finding out for yourself what actually creates joy and empowerment. So, like, excuse my burps, Teal Swan says, sometimes you have to just get busy taking action. You have to live your life. You can't figure it all out, heal it all in your room, and then go out once you're perfect and do it. You have to do it now, whatever the it seems to be. And by doing the it now, you're going to discover which aspects of it were actually joy inducing and actually empowering. There may be parts of what you're doing now that are empowering and joyful and parts that are not. Don't assume it's the whole package. Don't assume you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It may just be pieces of it. It may have everything to do with where you're physically located on the earth. You've got to experiment and live into your possibilities in order to discover what is true for you and what is actually empowering and joy inducing for you. So, to review, we have to choose it no matter what people outside of us or what the voices inside of us or the energies inside of us are saying. We have to do our energy healing work in order to clear and our therapeutic processing work to clear and release and integrate the parts of ourselves that are resisting joy for ourselves. We have to make choice. We have to choose joy and choose empowerment in order to experience it rather than waiting until we're perfectly healed and expecting it to just show up. And that's pretty much it. It sounds simple. I would say it is simple, but it's not always easy. Definitely simple formula, not always an easy one to live into. So let's take some insights, questions, curiosities from you guys. What, if anything, are any of you wondering about this? Um, what have you discovered about this on your own journey? What did you think was going to be a thing, but then realized later wasn't a joy-inducing thing? Let's share some things in the chat and hear from you guys so I have something to respond to. I think I've said all the words I can say about this. So, thoughts, questions, curiosities, insights, please throw them in the chat. Remember, every time you guys share in here, you're empowering somebody else to hear what they need to hear or to share what they need to say. We are nothing without one another. So let's share. What do you guys have? Go. Joy and empowerment. What creates it for you? What did you think would create it, but then it turned out it didn't? What questions do you have about it? My psychic spidey senses are open and ready for business. If you have a question on this topic, I'm happy to read on it energetically for you. Throw it in the chat. Don't be afraid to be super personal, super specific. Alex says she's resonating and formulating her question. Thank you so much for formulating. Appreciate you. What about the rest of you? What questions have you? I'll tell you one thing in the meantime that gives me joy is this little animal right here. So much joy in the connection with her and the petting of her head. I'm just gonna sing weird songs until you ask me some questions. Does anybody have a specific thing that you don't understand about this, or that you thought was one thing or isn't, or that you could use clarification on? Please throw it in the chat. I will talk like that. Okay, right now I'm in the process, says Alex. Thank you for asking a question, Alex, of moving into an apartment in my current location area. It's not feeling super joyful, but it feels like a necessity. I wonder if that's just part of the process, or am I like making the wrong choice? So I get a big no on am I making the wrong choice? I do believe it's part of the process. I think this is one of those things I was just talking about where it's like you're going to have to make the first move, right? You've been in this one situation for a little while now, over, repeating the wondering, not sure, staying, because it felt like I'm not sure where else to go. And I get that. So this is a move. Now, in making this move, you can go, when I moved there, as you're there, you can start to go, I really like this about it, and I like that about it, and this brings me joy, but that doesn't, and that doesn't, and that doesn't. Next time I move, I'm gonna choose a place that has none of that, and none of that, and none of that, but all of this, and all of this, and all of that. And I'm gonna choose the opposite of these things, the things that aren't what you desire in the new place. So you're gonna learn from this choice. This is why they say choice creates awareness. Sometimes you have to choose to date someone to realize, oh, I actually want these other things in a partner. You have to date them to know that. You can't know it ahead of time, no matter how psychic you are, believe me. I was having a conversation with consciousness today about romance, and I was like, can you just tell me if this, or that? And it was like, no. And I was like, what do you mean, no? And it was like, nah, you're going to have to live into that. And you have to get empowered around that. How do you get empowered around it, Katie? Consciousness reminded me, live into it. Date the person you think you want to date and see what happens. You can't hide it from life and expect to come into awareness. Choice creates awareness. So you moving into your place, Alex, is going to create new awarenesses. I like that it's in a place with lots of grass around it, but I don't like that the ceilings are low. And I like that I have a bathtub, but I don't get joy from the fluorescent lights. So you just gather information by each choice you make and go, next time I'm going to choose more joy. And by being in this new space, you're going to have a little more joy than you had at the house that you were in. And then when you're there for a while, you're going to go, okay, little more joy in the next place. And then she's saying, yep, that's kind of what I was getting, but it's weird to feel so like whatever about a big choice like a move. I hear that. Give me a second though, because I think there's something. Is there something else here? No. Because I'm looking at, is there energy to clear? No. Okay. The big thing with you is really about taking the action and making the move and seeing how empowering it is to, in the first step here for you is the empowerment you're going to get from living on your own again. And you're going to get that after a few like weeks and days and months of doing it and struggling to do it, right? Like when we live on our own, we move out of, if you're getting some help from family or whatever, and you move into your own rad pad, it's a little harder. It's a little scarier, right? Because you got to like make sure the money is there each month. When you succeed at that by meeting your rent each month, you feel really fucking empowered. And what I get for you is you're going to get a lot more joy and empowerment coming into your system just by succeeding at winning at paying your own way. Then after 6 months to a year of that, you'll be bored of it. And you'll be like, I fucking can do that. All right, I can do that. No big deal. Now what? What would be more joyful? But it's almost like the universe can't open up for you the next level of joy until you've experienced the joy that comes from the empowerment you get of paying your own way again. That's one of the main things about people who I can think of a few people I know, more than one, who stay with their parents a longer time than feels good to them because it's comfortable. And this is not about you, Alex. I'm actually talking about other people now. People who haven't even been looking at the question of what if I leave? Can I leave? How do I leave? Where should I go? People that are just settled right on into somebody else taking care of them. The problem with that is, yes, it is comfortable, but you never get the empowerment of know what it feels like to badass your way through paying higher rent and living badassily. That brings a joy. You know how much joy I get paying my high ass rent? Because it makes me feel strong. And let's be fair, it's not the highest rent I've ever paid because there's a place where you can stretch yourself too far where it's just not even fun anymore. It's just your whole life is paying rent. That's no fun. But then there's the other extreme where you're not paying any and it's super easy, but you've got no empowerment as a result. So we're looking for that sweet spot where you're a little bit on the edge. It's like a little more than you'd like to pay, but not a lot more. And you're doing it. That's where you get that fucking look at me, high five. And remember, you guys, here's another important piece. We have to high five ourselves and celebrate the wins. You know, every single time I pay my rent, I'm just like, I am amazing. Look at me. When like normal people are like, yeah, you just pay your rent. That's what you do. I, I don't give a fuck what normal people are doing. I am high fiving the shit out of myself every time I pay rent because it's pretty high the rent I pay. And where I started off, you know, as a working actor, like I was I was always my priority was to book shows, right? So I lived wherever I had to live in order to be able to do these low paying theater jobs. So for me to like live in a beautiful place and be able to pay it, I feel like so abundant and happy that I'm just like, you go, Rubin, every fucking month. And that inspires me for the next month. I want to feel that way again at the end of the next month. So I do my little savings thing and I pay my rent and I buy my fancy stuff because it brings me so much joy to be empowered. And it brings me so much empowerment to feel joyful. Do you know how disempowering depression is? You know how depressing disempowerment is? So, Alex, I want to hear from you I get like 3 months from now. When you've lived in the new place for 3 months, maybe six, and you've paid rent each time, I want to hear where your empowerment level is and where your joy level is, specifically related to the empowerment of having lived there and having paid for it. And I know you've done it before. It's not like a brand new thing for you, but still, you've been in a certain situation. Now you're doing a new thing. And I think you get the point. So thank you so much for that question. Yay. Sounds good. All right. That was such a good question. Does anybody else have something on their minds on this topic? Please throw it in the chat. What specific to your life things are you up against now that you could use a little clarification on about how do I get more joy around this? How do I have more empowerment around that? Throw it in the chat. Empowerment around that. Throw it in the chat. You are beautiful and not fat, no matter what they say on the mat. You are not a dog or a cat. I'm just going to keep rapping until you guys, this is the best rapping I can do. I'm going to rap I'm going to white lady lame rap until you guys write questions in the chat. How about that? Listen to me rap. It's going to be lame and nobody's going to like it. I don't even have a mic it. I'm gonna Mike and Ike it. Eating candy. So delicious. It's yummy, but not nutritious. You guys just want me to rap. I see what's happening. You're not getting my free raps. You're not getting these bars for free. You got to pay to come see the Katie show. All right. Does anybody else have a question about empowerment and joy? I'm going to wait one more minute and then we'll wrap it up if there's no other questions. And please also just share some victories. What are some empowering choices you guys have made? Okay, you can share that too. I chose this and I felt more empowered. I chose that and I felt more joy. Share it, inspire each other, please. All right, Jenny says, is always searching for the next adventure and leaping into the unknown more of a trauma response? This is such a good question. Or spiritually rewarding? And how can you tell the difference? Really good question. Um, this one requires a lot of deep diving and vulnerability with self and honesty. So you have to look at when you search for the next adventure, are you running away from something or are you running towards something? So, in other words, if you're running away from pain into an adventure to avoid pain, the bad news is when you get to your adventure, you'll do it, it'll be great, and then it'll be over, and then you'll have the pain still. So, you're never going to escape the pain. My thing, I'm a very adventurous person. So what I do is I do my pain work, I drop into it, I do some of it, and then I take breaks and go adventuring so that I can make sure I'm getting both needs met. So there's no black and white answer to this question. It would depend on you, Jenny. So the question I would throw back at you is, are you running away from pain and trauma and facing the difficulty of your past trauma with all your adventuring? Or are you just running towards your joy? Or, Jenny, is it a little bit of both? Because it can be a little bit of both too. And the solution to that would be carve out specific times in your life that are designed for you to process your trauma. A way to do that is come to one of my healing classes. And you know that every Wednesday or every Thursday at this time, you're going to process the shit out of your trauma. And then on the weekend, go fucking adventure all you want. But you got to carve out spaces where you're doing your trauma work so that you can guilt-free do your adventuring. Does that make sense? And do you have a question about that following up? Let me know, Jenny, if that made sense to you and if you have further questions. I mean, to answer your second question, how you can tell the difference, it's sort of like if you adventure long enough and you find that at the end of every adventure, you're alone in some hotel room feeling empty or depressed, then you know adventuring doesn't solve it. Adventuring isn't scratching the itch. Adventuring is a distraction because I'm still depressed. It's exactly like what I was talking about before when I was doing shows as an addictive way to just like get the adrenaline up. I had to discover by doing that. That's how I discovered, oh, I don't even have access to joy. All I do is adventure and do shows to get my adrenaline up so I can have any joy at all. But that's how I found out. So that's when I got really busy going inside. Cool. Awesome. I'm glad that's clear. Okay. Great question. Jacqueline. I'm working on becoming empowered and taking baby steps, but having trouble knowing if the choice I'm about to make is the right one. Okay. Yep. That's one of the most disempowering worries you can get hung up on. Is this the right choice? The only way to know if it's the right choice is to make it. Make the choice. Make a move. This is where it comes back to you have to act your way into right thinking. You can't think your way into right acting. You have to make a choice and then be like, I like it here. Or make a choice and be like, I don't like it here. Or make a choice and then be like, I like parts of this and not the other parts, and then get the other parts' needs met. The notion that there's a right choice to make is a total judgment of yourself. Anytime you're in the right wrong paradigm, we've talked about this before with you, but anytime you're going to, is this right or is it wrong? You're in your head and you're in judgment. Coming from your head and coming from judgment when you're trying to make a choice is always going to confuse you and fuck you up. Instead, what you have to do is choose what feels joyful, choose what feels empowering, and find out. Stick it out for a while. Give it 3 or 6 months to discover what you can discover about it. So the best tip I can give you is anytime that voice says, is this the right choice? You have to say to that voice, thank you for your question. I'm not going to try to answer that question right now because it's an impossible question to answer. Instead, I'm going to move my body toward a choice, and I'm going to discover in my body how that choice feels to me. So, Jacqueline, you have to discipline yourself out of your head. And again, this is one of those where it's like, no matter how much healing work you do, you're still going to have that voice come up. Is it the right choice? Well, you say to that voice, let's find out. Let's choose it and see what happens. And it does feel like a risk. And it does feel scary, and it will be a risk, and it will be scary, and that's called living. When your life has no fear and no risk and no scary, you start to feel pretty dead pretty quick. Does that help? Does that make sense? Do you see what I mean, Jacqueline? Let me know in the chat. Mm. I just spilled half of that water on my face. Nah. And on my shirt. Let me know if that made sense, Jacqueline, and if you have any follow-up questions. Did that make sense? Did that track? Okay, good. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for asking. And if you have a follow-up question, please ask it. You guys are not taking up too much space at all. Please take up more space. All right, other questions that folks have. And or if you don't have a question, could a couple of you share some recent victories about empowering choices you made and or joy-based choices you made or choices you made that created more joy or less joy and what you learned from it? Let's just throw a couple examples up in the chat. All you're going to be doing is helping yourself and helping everybody else who's here. No harm can come from sharing. Don't make me start rapping again. Don't make me do it. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to do it because that's one of my skills. You got to pay to come to the Katie Show. All right, I'll give this one more minute. And if nobody has anything they're willing to share or celebrate about their empowerment, we'll wrap it up for today. Look at it. It's 5:55. How do we find peace with enjoying our lives while also understanding suffering in the world, especially with current events like wars? Okay, good question. There's a lot to this question. Yeah, it is a big question. No, don't be sorry. It's a very good question. The shortest answer I can give to this question is, well, let me say a few things and then we'll see where we get. First of all, does you feeling sad about Ukraine or any other war or the suffering children in Africa, does you feeling sad about it and just not being empowered and not having joy, does that help the people in Ukraine? Does that help the people in Africa? Who does it help? No one. Your suffering because other people suffer doesn't make them suffer less. Okay, so think about it this way. Let's say you become super empowered and you're super joyful. When you're super empowered and joyful, you usually make more money. When you make more money, guess what you have more of? The ability to help the people in Ukraine and Africa. So get more joyful, get more empowered, you'll make more money, and you can go donate all the money you want to the people in Africa and Ukraine, or the people down the street who are suffering, or your neighbors who are unhappy, or your mom and dad who can't seem to choose joy for themselves. You can't help other people by meeting them at their shitty level. Now, I'm not judging people in Ukraine or Africa for having a, quote, shitty level. I'm just saying that to make a point. If people are suffering, you suffering along with them doesn't lift them up. Now, that's different from, let's say you were going to pull a Mother Teresa, or let's say it were correct for you to go to Ukraine and sit in the bunkers with people. That might feel very joyful and empowering to you. If it did, I would say, get your ass on a plane and go to Ukraine right now. But that's not joyful or empowering for everybody. But if you really give a shit about the people suffering in the world, get more joyful and get more empowered so you can contribute to them. Does that make sense? Jenny, feel free to ask me more about that and more follow-up questions. If that makes sense, do you have a follow-up question to it? Let me know. Really good way of looking at it. I've literally had that thought about making more money for this exact reason. Yeah, I worked with a perfected master, a Sufi master from Jerusalem who used to speak every Friday to 10,000 people. He would give what's called Juma, which is like the Muslim version of church, to 10,000 people in Jerusalem at the fucking Wailing Wall and at Mecca. It was a big deal. And he would come to California, Northern California, and sit in this teeny mosque in St. Helena with a bunch of us white people trying to transcend time and space. And he would teach us stuff. And he would say, if you want to be generous, it's good to be wealthy. That was a perfected master, meaning like higher vibration than a guru, like done with his work, complete. Changing the world. And he was part of like the peace talks between wherever and wherever in the Middle East, which then got undone. But still, he made that shit happen with a couple other dudes. Anyway, he's a big dude and he was a very powerful energy healer. Holy shit. He would just come near the room you were in. When he would fly over the country and land, I would start to like be shaking in my car and sobbing because I was connected to his energy by being part of his lineage. And he was just the most powerful spiritual being I've ever encountered in physical form. And he would say, if you want to be generous, it's good to be wealthy. He also had an orphanage in Jerusalem that he ran for poor children that was free. You could just live there for free. But you know why? It's because he was a wealthy ass dude and he could afford that. So there's that. What's the value of letting people control us? I've allowed so much boundary overlapping, and now I'm ready for it to change. Any tips? I mean, we need another hour for this one. I wish you guys hadn't waited so long to ask this question. Well, you're going to have to ask yourself, what is the value of letting people control you, Jennifer B? What do you get out of being controlled? I'll tell you some of the common ones, and we'll wrap up with this. When you let other people control you, you don't have to take responsibility for the risk of life. Being empowered, choosing empowerment and choosing joy is risky. You have to risk losing things in order to choose things for yourself. But when you let other people control you, you don't have any risk. You're not responsible. Oh, well, I guess I can't do anything and I can't choose joy because he said. So now you don't have to choose anything and there's no risk in that. So usually it's comfort, safety, and the avoidance of risk. But you might want to ask yourself, what is the value of letting people control you? And so if you're ready for a change, I would say choose it. Stop choosing to be controlled. Take control yourself. How? Choose it. Move your feet in the direction of empowerment. That's the only thing that's going to help you, whether you do healing work or not. So, but you ask an excellent question, because for me to get out of my victimization, and when I was being controlled by other people and victimized by many people, I had to really understand the value of it for myself. Why was I choosing it? And I realized I didn't want to take any risks. I was afraid in every direction. If I choose this and it's wrong. If I choose this and it doesn't work. If I choose this and they laugh at me. Until eventually the pain of the risk became worth it, because the pain of being controlled was too much. So you're the only one who can tell us if you're at that place yet, where you'd rather have the pain of risk over the pain of having no power. There's always pain, you guys, in every choice. There's pain in every empowerment choice. There's pain in joyful choices. And then eventually you get better and better at dealing with the small pain that comes with taking risk. And you start to prefer that small pain that comes with taking risk because of the joyful empowerment outcomes you get over the large pain of staying where you are. All right. I love you guys. These were excellent questions. Thank you for chiming in. And eventually we got there. I had to do a little wrapping to get us there, but we got there. I appreciate your questions so much. We will be back next week. I'm back on the Katie Church train. Guys, bring your friends. Who else wants to be here with us? I know you have friends that have questions for consciousness. I know you have friends who could benefit from these conversations, so bring them along with you. I love you. You're doing great. Remember, KatieRubin.com when you're ready for your private reading, your private energy healing, your private coaching session, your private human design reading. Get on it, KatieRubin.com. Come to class. Writing class starts tonight, and I'm actually late for it, so I'm going to hop off right now. Love you guys. Have a great night. Take care.